Miles Morales is the woke's most successful skin suit, and he's now finally come full circle to completion, emerging from the withered old corpse of Peter Parker as a beautiful black butterfly. Or more correctly, as a panic-sized bursting forth from Peter Parker's chest, but hey, details. See, here's the interesting thing about Miles Morales, as it is now official that Peter Parker is completely retiring to focus on his mental health, which I entirely understand, as apparently throughout the entirety of the recent video game, Peter spent his days getting his ass absolutely plastered again and again and again and again by every single villain who crossed his path, and Miles Morales, who beat him up even with the Venom symbiote bound to Peter. Bearing in mind now, for those unaware of the whole Spider-Man lore thing here, the Venom symbiote, it boosts Spider-Man's already pretty significant powers by a magnificent margin, and to then get his, I point out as well, fully grown ass beat into the dust by the teenage version of himself. Yeah, I'd consider retiring too, frankly, at that point. And a lot of people have been noticing as well. And this is despite, of course, the fact that Miles Morales has never sold quite as well as Spider-Man. In fact, Spider-Man has been one of the biggest sales successes for this, well, the comic book, not even the brand in particular, for comic book franchises. Spider-Man has somehow been the one title that has managed to perform consistently well, even despite all of the drama surrounding comics books in general. Which is probably why he was also a perfect target for the skin suit. Albeit, see, what is interesting about this is, it was actually a relatively well executed skin suit. Miles Morales is just Black Spider-Man in virtually every way. He moves like him, he talks like him, he fights like him, he fights the same goddamn villains as him, he is turned in the same way as him. He is literally just Spider-Man, but black. And what the woke did actually intelligently when it came to Miles Morales was that they didn't try to just Delito Spider-Man immediately. Instead, they used Miles Morales as a side character, an alternative Earth story, of which there are countless in comic books now, to be like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if? And then he starts interacting with Spider-Man. Spider-Man is immediately like, hey, aren't you an awesome dude? You're fantastic. You're so much better than me. And over the course of years and years and years, he takes over the mantle in a way that is actually, if I was to ignore the reason why this is happening, would say is pretty damn okay. Because he doesn't just take over the Spider-Man name, even though he kind of actually does. He does so over the course of years, and a lengthy relationship with Peter Parker, even adding in the little homage of what would Peter do. It is, by far, the left's most successful and well-done skin suit, and there are very, very few of those. I mean, what? Nick Fury, I guess, but that's more due to the strength of the actor and the Avengers movies rather than a well-done race swap, in essence. The problem is, however, that Miles Morales will always remain Miles Morales and not Spider-Man because of the reasons for this. I've seen a lot of people try to defend this as, oh, it's very racist to say that he can't be Spider-Man just because he's black. No, he can't be Spider-Man because he's black. He can't be Spider-Man because he isn't Peter Parker. And I don't accept this whole argument of the passing of the mantle, which is the thing like, oh, loads of superheroes pass the mantle. Yeah, when are we likely to see Black Panther passing his over to a white dude exactly? As every time the mantle is being passed, it seems to be to either a minority or a woman. Weird. Almost as if there is some overriding agenda at work here, which, of course, there is. The only difference with Miles Morales is that he was a slow burn part of agenda, and again, was relatively well done as far as woke race swaps go, I do suppose. A low hurdle to clear, but a hurdle nevertheless. But what is interesting about this is, I I'm wondering as to the reception of it. Again, Miles Morales has actually been able to build a fairly solid-esque fan base where he is able to operate in a primary character capacity, and people don't immediately reject him as such. Like, the Miles Morales Spider-Man game didn't sell well, but it didn't sell poorly either. And now that, again, Spidey has officially passed the mantle, and Miles is just Spider-Man but black, I imagine a lot of the casual fans that have actually been brought up along with him won't really have a big problem with this. Then again, we are now entering a bit of an interesting era with FNAF. Five Nights at Freddy's. So the excess media has been struggling a little bit to figure out what exactly to say about Five Nights at Freddy's. This is a Variety article. Box office, Five Nights at Freddy's repeats #1 despite a brutal 76% drop. So Five Nights at Freddy's is currently, I believe, popularity #1. It is the most popular movie on Earth at the moment, according to the mainstream, according to IMDb, etc., etc. And we know IMDb to be biased. I've done videos proving that with quotes from the people working there. And yet, of course, it did take an enormous hit to the ratings, but it earned $130.6 million. In fact, recent reports put the number closer to $200 million, and on track to maybe earn as much as $30 million. And I bear in mind, this movie's budget was $20 million. It has quintupled its money. It is an old-school Hollywood movie success of the kind that the industry keeps chasing but keeps failing to actually catch. This movie, despite costing $20 million to make, has earned as much as the production budget of a Marvel movie. It is a remarkable financial success, despite, again, the hammering in reviews. The critics' reviews, of course, are rather damning, to put it mildly, and you know what? I actually agree with the majority of them. They're way too low for the problems they have, but let's see here. The big screen take on indie horror sensation has too much plot and not enough of the game's primal security cam thrills. I actually 100% agree with IGN for the first time in my entire existence, I pretty much do believe. Because, is there? FNAF is such an enormous success and such an enormous critical failure, and audience failure as well, mind you, as the audience reviews aren't much better, but it is also such an enormous success for the exact same reason, namely that it is a product made purely for the fans of that thing. No, here's the thing. I mentioned that when I was watching this movie. I mentioned it in ArchCast, I mentioned on Twitter. I didn't think it was a very good horror movie. It isn't. It's barely a horror movie at all. It isn't even a very good movie, and if you don't know anything about Five Nights at Freddy's, I don't actually know if you would enjoy it. I don't know if you would enjoy it more or less if you know anything about FNAF, because on the one hand, it tells you who the main villain is in the first, I think, 10-15 minutes of the movie. It tells you. It gives you a giant flag indicating, hey, this is the bad guy, by the way, right here. If you know anything about FNAF, it'll be fairly easy to pick up on. It's not, super in your face, but it's pretty in your face. And that kind of undermines it, because the entire point of it is the big twist, the wow, oh my god, well, is that how it works? But if you already know the twist, well, you're not going to be particularly shocked by it. And so at that point, it's just like what was it, an hour, 30 minutes, 2 hours or something runtime? A slow burn up to the twist, and then you're sitting there an hour 50. An hour 50 runtime for a twist you already know is coming. That you already know what is, and you already know everything about. Yeah. And even for the uninitiated, I imagine the burn is so goddamn slow that you're not going to be able to get into it. You won't have any frame of reference as to why the animatronics are doing what they're doing, behaving in the way they are, or why they're even supposed to be scary. As even in the games, they always had a bit of a hard time explaining why these slow-moving, trundling things could be an active hazard to a human being who could simply get up and fucking run. But, hey, details, eh? And yet again, it is an enormous success, precisely because when I was watching it, I didn't feel like I was consuming a product. For the first time in the last damn near a decade, I was watching something and it just felt homely. Like this was made for the people who enjoy this thing. It wasn't made because they wanted to earn money. It wasn't made because they wanted to reach a wider audience. It wasn't made because they wanted to sell you anything, really. It was just made by a dude who made a thing and it's like, this thing is really cool. Don't you think so too? We're like, yay, let's make this thing cool. It's just the thing you like. And that's it. And there is a certain purity in that. It's completely true to itself. It doesn't pretend to be anything else. It doesn't pretend to be anything more complex. It doesn't even change the story much, despite the fact that changing the story would probably have been very beneficial. It does one or two major changes, like the introduction of a certain animatronic that might not be an animatronic, for example. And by the way, the introduction of that one was, fantastic. Like, genuinely a moment that almost made the preceding hour, 50 minutes worth it. But again, this earned $200 million, and this is a niche franchise. Don't get me wrong, FNAF is hardly an unknown indie band working out of its mother's basement. It's got like 5 or 6 games, spin-offs, merchandise, etc., and it's a well-known franchise, but still, this ain't no Star Wars, this ain't no Marvel, no Avengers. And yet it still managed to earn $200 million of a shoestring budget. And I'm wondering if this might not be the template, because we saw the same thing with One Piece, of course, as well. One Piece is an unabashed tribute to the fans, and it was rewarded mightily and monetarily for being so. In this era that is dawning right now, where you can be a fan of a thing again, rather than simply just a goddamn consumer. Will Miles Morales survive? I'm not so sure, because it seems almost ridiculous, but back in the day, you could be a fan of something. When you were a fan of World of Warcraft, you were a fan of the setting, you were a fan of the characters, you enjoyed it, you loved it. You didn't consume it because you'd spend 6 hours playing the MMO, 6 years more correctly. You didn't consume it because you'd played all of the previous titles, or because it was like the next big thing. You played it because you loved it. When you went to Orgrimmar, you're like, oh my god, look at that, I recognize that. Oh my god, that's the barracks. Oh my god, that's Thrall. Oh my god. You could be a fan of it. Whereas now, nobody's a fan of Diablo 4. Nobody's a fan of the new Warcraft expansions, all 3 of them. Now it's all just products. It is something that has been manufactured not because you enjoyed it, not because the people who made it enjoy it, but because they expect you to pay for it. And of course, that will always need to remain the nugget at the heart of any business, because without profitability, you don't have a franchise, you don't have a thing to sell. But you can combine the both, as, again, beautifully demonstrated by the $200 million profit of a $20, honestly, pretty mediocre movie. Simply by being the thing that the fans wanted it to be. And in that era, which is on the way right now, we are in the very earliest years of it, I don't think Miles Morales is going to do very well. I in fact think that we might actually see a series of events where the mantle will be passed back again to various characters, where you will see the resurgence of the famous ones, even though, honestly, I kinda hope that they'll just die. I'm sick of Batman. I am sick of Spider-Man. I am less sick of Superman, simply because we haven't received any good Superman, even mediocre Superman, for a very long time, but still, I would actually prefer if we saw more of this and less of everything that is already established. We'll have to wait and see. Until then, Miles Morales, the world's most successful skin suit. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.